to get this gun
Well,
incident dealt with?
what happens is a Coshada Indian crosses the river and tells Castaneda, says, you may not know it, but they've got more people than you do, and they're not giving you that cannon. And so at that juncture, Castaneda says, well, look, I can't cross here, so let's try to find another place we can cross the river. So he leaves Gonzales. He just leaves. And they have a meeting that night. And they said,
The Texians or the Mexicans?
The Texians.
Okay.
And they said, well, the Centralists have left. What are we going to do? And one of them actually says, it draws up a document and says, well, we've ridden too far to go home without a fight. And if the Centralists won't cross the river and attack us, we will cross the river and attack them. And that's exactly what they did.
I've stood on the field
Yes,
where
you
that
have.
happened with you. And it seemed like such a non-incident.
Well, it is a non-incident. I mean, actually, and this is the irony too, the Battle of Gonzales isn't in Gonzales.
No, it's, what's the name
It's
of the
a little community of Cost.
Yeah, a little cost.
Now, of course, the Cost isn't there
Yeah, I
in
mean,
1835, but they.
It's really not there now. But
Well, yeah, it's a very tiny little farming community. But Castaneda and his 100 dragoons move about 8 miles out of town, and they camp for the night.
yeah, there's kind of a mound out there.
Yeah, and then the Texians cross the river. Now they mount the cannon for the first time.
Well, that's nice.
On some sort of a carriage on wagon wheels. And it takes them pretty much all night to get across the river, ferry infantry, artillerymen, cavalrymen, and they are following the road to San Antonio. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, on the morning of October 2nd, they literally, in the darkness, run into the Centralist camp. and there's intermittent firing. Nobody can see. Castaneda and his men take position on a rise. The Texians, there's a slough that's tributary of the Guadalupe. They take cover down in the bushes. But it's not until the next morning that they can even see. And again, this is just, it's crazy because Castaneda comes down with under a flag of truce. And John H. Moore, who has been named commander of this ad hoc force, goes out and he says, yeah, what can I do for you? And he says, well, you can tell me why you're shooting at me. and For starters.
Yeah.
And he says, well, because you are a minion of the dictator Santana, and you have come to take our cannon. He says, look, dude, no. I've come to request the cannon, but my specifically orders, I mean, I didn't try to take it from you. I asked for it. And he said, and as far as me being a minion of Santana, you're way off base because I personally am a Federalist.
So do they actually start swapping shots?
Well, yeah, that night.
Yeah,
you
the
know,
night before,
the more early in the morning darkness.
Okay.
But Castaneda says, I'm a Federalist. And Moore says, well, if you are a Federalist, you're wearing the wrong uniform and you're on the wrong side. Why don't you come and join us?
Well,
And
that's an American question.
And Castaneda says, well, but I am also a professional military man. And this week, the people who issue my orders are Centralist. And soldiers obey orders. And that's where I am, but don't call me a Centralist. And he said, well, look, we've got nothing left to talk about then. Either you're with us or you're against us. So the two commanders go back to their respective units, and Moore orders J.C. Neal, who's a veteran of the War of 1812,
Sure.
to touch off the cannon. And they have a banner that they unfold above the cannon. It has a picture of the cannon, a star, and the words, "Come and take it." And I've always thought that if they were serious, they would have painted those words in Spanish. but I think.
Orale.
But at any rate, they fire the cannon. They fire the long rifles. There's a wild, headlong Celtic charge, and Castaneda says, we're outnumbered and outgunned
And better mounted.
and better mounted, so let's ride back to San Antonio.
Any
And,
casualties?
One Mexican killed, almost by accident. But, we call it the Battle of Gonzales, but, it's not a battle. It's not even much of a skirmish.
Yeah, no clue.
But, which is not to say, though, that it's not decisive. The spark that everybody's been waiting for has finally arrived.
Boom. All right. So then.
So blood's been shed, shots have been fired.
But now there's an army of the people that is.
Well,
kind
not
of,
immediately. Word spreads like wildfire through Texas that it started.
Yeah.
There's been a battle, and people just mount up and go to where they've heard the fighting
so
was.
the next thing you know, it's Lollapalooza at Gonzales.
You do. You've got an armed mob. It's not, and
Like
then
a Renaissance fair.
But yes, very much like, because where's all the fighting? We heard
That's right.
that was a couple of days ago.
Good,
It's
I'll
all
take
over.
a turkey leg.
That's right.
Where's
Well,
the funnel cake?
But among all the people showing up in Gonzales, who should show up but Stephen F. Austin, the most influential,
Well, yeah,
the most
he's got to be
respected
there.
guy in Texas. And when he shows up, people said, well, Austin's here. Let's elect him general of this ad hoc armed mob, which becomes the army of the people.
So we've got bookish Stephen F. Austin as war leader.
Yes.
And so what's his plan? I understand that he kind of had in the back of his head a move to Matamoros, but there was the immediate issue of Bear.
Well, but here's the thing. No sooner does Austin get there and he's elected that people, you hear this battle cry sound through the Texian camp. On to Bear, on to Bear.
That's the immediate target. Sure.
That's where Coss is.
Yeah.
That's where San Antonio is the capital.
Yeah.
So
It's the spiritual, cultural,
yes,
everything.
and that's where the enemy is. Let's go there and whip him.
Sure.
So there is this march to Bear, which sets up the siege of Bear.
All right, so walk me briefly through the siege of Bear.
Well, Austin and the army arrive in Bear, and they find that Coss and the his centralist forces there have fortified the town. If they try to attack the town friendly, they're going to sustain a lot of casualties.
And none of these guys join this militia or join this people's army to get killed.
So very wisely, Austin decides to throw a rope around San Antonio de Bear.
Just besiege it.
Yeah, nobody gets in, nobody
That
gets
makes sense.
out. And it becomes a slow, strangling siege. The problem is, these guys aren't soldiers. They joined up to fight, not to watch.
So I'm sure the army starts to disintegrate.
Well, by this time, it's November. It's starting to get cold. They haven't brought the proper clothing.
Sure.
So people begin to desert.
And does Austin hang with it?
Well, Austin, you remember we were talking about Austin's health.
Yeah.
Austin's health has steadily deteriorated. He is so ill that he can't mount a horse.
Wow. That's kind of important for a general.
Well, yeah, without the help of his body servant, Simon. Austin owned a slave.
Wow.
Even though he was against the institution of slavery per se.
They come in handy when you need to get your horse.
Well, when
get
you
on
need
your
to,
horse
yeah.
and you're sick, yeah.
So he's ill, but he says, I will hang in till we get the job done, because that's the kind of guy that Stephen F. Austin is. And people sort of demean his military skills. He's not a trained military officer, but he's a quick study.
Yeah, he is a smart guy.
And he does all the right things as long as he's in command. But it's obvious to him that I'm not the right guy for this. I'm sick. I feel terrible. Probably a more vigorous man could do this.
Who would that be?
Well, that would be a guy named Edward Burleson.